Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Mike Gill live at Charlie's in Summers Point on a Friday afternoon, starting to fill up on a Friday. Phillies tonight. You can watch the game here at Charlie's. And, of course, you can watch the Eagles and the Saints this Sunday right here at Charlie's in Summers Point. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. And just like old times, Adam, we're back on a normal schedule. The injury report is fresh out, and we have A.J. Brown, Johnny Wilson, and a new addition yesterday to that injury report. That was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Mike, did not work for the last 2 days. He's got a foot injury. They're listing him as questionable. Look, they could also downgrade him to Martyr, doubtful, or out. So we'll see. They remember they downgraded last Sunday A.J. Brown to out. So we'll see what happens. A.J. Brown didn't practice. No surprise. He's out. I'd be very surprised if he played next week at Tampa because they have the bye the next week. It's a hamstring. You don't want these things to linger. Johnny Wilson, the good thing is he will be available. He has no game status designation with a hamstring. They do need, he actually can block. Like, he's really good at it. That does matter. They obviously could use him as a receiver without A.J. Brown, but that's it. Now, for the Saints, the big one is Marshawn Lattimore, their star cornerback, who, Mike, if you study his career since 2017, he's had really bad issues with hamstrings. He missed last week's game. It's not great. He did a little work yesterday. They'll see what he does today, but that would certainly help the Eagles if he didn't play. But it didn't matter last week when they destroyed the Cowboys.
Sure didn't, and that was a offensive explosion. They've scored 91 points, though, in 2 games. They've had offensive explosions in both games this year. We'll get into that. Eagles, just Brown and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You mentioned Wilson. What about the Saints side of things?
Yeah, no, I just mentioned it with Marshawn Lattimore. And Colin Saunders also, he's a starting defensive tackle. He probably won't play with his calf injury. He's missed the first 2 games. Brian Brisset is a former first-round pick there. He was last year a first-rounder for them. Whether he's ready or not, he's going to play. They're not real deep at the position, so he's going to have to play. But they're coming pretty healthy, Mike. We'll get over the matchups in a second. The big issue, the game changer, is A.J. Brown. The Eagles have to generate points. Hurts has got to play better. He did not play well. Probably, if you stacked up the last 2 years, that was one of his worst games. We outlined this with Greg Cosell on our Inside the Tape show, which, by the way, has generated over 100 comments on our YouTube channel. Pretty funny. People are pretty fired up. Even the Hurts, most of the Hurts supporters agree with what we saw. They're like, this can't happen. So they're going to have to manufacture points. But, Mike, I'm telling you, guys were getting open last week. Jalen was not throwing it to them.
Yeah, and, let's talk about some of the issues heading into this game. And I would imagine at the top of that list, where do you put Hurts?
Yeah, he's at number 1, Mike. But here's the thing. All he has to do is not roll out to his right. Don't move without pressure. It's one thing if – and the offensive line, Mike, last week, we should mention, for the most part, was outstanding. There are 3 or 4 plays the offensive line didn't do a great job in pass pro. Other than that, they were phenomenal. They've actually been very good the first 2 games. Hurts has this habit, which he had last year, which it wasn't that bad in week 1. He did a little of it. This past week, it was really bad, where he moves without pressure. You can't do that, and he rolls to his right. He just has a habit. He's not the only quarterback I've seen do this. He's got to take what's there, check the ball down. I mean, it was encouraging that Barkley did have 4 catches last week. A couple of them were checkdowns, but they need more explosive plays from Barkley in the pass game. The run game is phenomenal. But we need – see, Mike, the one thing I've had with Kellen Moore is not the play design. The scheme's really good. He schemed guys open last week. That wasn't the problem. We're looking for those explosive plays that we thought we were going to get from DeAndre Swift last season with the former offensive coordinator. We didn't see one of them. Really, we didn't see anything. It was very disappointing. I know it's early, and we did have the great catch by Barkley in week 1.
And no Brown.
We're looking for more of that. Yeah, we're looking for more of that.
And not having A.J. Brown, he had a 66-yard catch in the first game. They just couldn't get anything going down the field in the second game, right?
Yeah, one play, I think, of over 20 yards, and I think it was actually the run by Hurts. So that's not what you're looking for. And the other thing is Jalen will help himself if he gets rid of the football and doesn't take so much contact. 13 runs, that's not what you're looking for. And by the way, they weren't all designed. Trust me on that one.
How big of a factor? Colin Thompson tells me all the time the most difficult. Now he played for Carolina, so he constantly went to New Orleans. That this is the most difficult spot in the league to play in, even when they're just an average team.
It's weird. Their home field for years was great, and then when they were a bad team, teams would just go in there and win. The crowd noise, though it was loud, wouldn't matter. But we're expecting to be very loud. And I get it. We know the Eagles have not had a good record against them, but how many of those players are left on the roster that faced them in New Orleans? Very few. So we know Lane Johnson is. He was there for the last game. But I think that was the Sidney Jones game where he did not play well and he grabbed his hamstring. That was not a good performance. So look, the bottom line is with the Eagles here, they got to handle it. You've got two offensive linemen. You've got Cam Jurgens, who's never started a game there. This is going to be interesting. You've got Mekhi Becton, who's never started a game at right guard there. That communication is, Todd Herman's told us on Patreon. He had a great interview for us, a Chalk Talk series, and he told us last month about how you really have to be careful when you have offensive line changes. There's got to be this simpatico and communication. It doesn't happen overnight. By the way, so far it's been good, but this is going to be a test, Mike. I'm glad we brought this up because and Hurts, we know Hurts has played in big games and loud stadiums, but this is to another level.
All right, we're looking at some of the issues heading into this game. Hurts at the top, crowd noise is big. What kind of pass rush can the Eagles generate, if any, on Sunday?
Yeah, this is the big one, Mike. Their edge rushers don't have a sack. I know it's only 2 games, but that's pretty bad. They're going to have to figure this out. I'm a little bit puzzled. I know the sim pressures aren't working. It's the guys aren't getting home. Sim pressures, when you drop those edge rushers, you hope that the front gets up there, or you drop your D lineman. You're hoping the front gets up there. No one's getting to the passer. Bryce Huff has earned his number of 0 so far. He's been a 0. He's trying, but he's just not getting home. Derek Carr, by the way, he's very up and down against the blitz over his career. He's risk averse. Now, if it gets protected and he likes what he sees, he delivers it. And you're going to see Rashid Shaheed Sunday, Mike. He's an elite deep threat. He's gotten off to a great start. You know where the ball's going. He rarely catches anything short. It's going to go long, and the Eagles better have a plan. The Eagles have been playing a lot of single high safety, which is not usually what Vic does. Vic Fangio, their defense coordinator, usually plays a lot of 2 high safeties to take away the deep ball. So I would think you'd see more of that going forward here, at least in this game, because you've got a deep threat like this. And by the way, Chris Olave could also run. Don't forget about him.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Shaheed and how he can beat you deep, and I keep thinking about, like, who matches up? How do they match up with him, from where he lines up, especially if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's out. You might have to move Maddox maybe to say what kind of configuration happens there. That's a whole other factor here. Who's the guy who lines up across from Shaheed and who can run with him?
Yeah, Mike, in fact, we talk about that on today's show. That they have the depth to do it, but it causes issues because they're so light at safety. In fact, right now, Tristan McCollum is the likely starter for Gardner-Johnson if he can't play. But they also can move Maddox here because Maddox was exclusively at safety in training camp because of the low numbers they had at the position. Or, obviously you could put Maddox at safety, but then you have who's your nickel? Is it DeJean? Well, he's probably not ready for that yet, being that he barely played last week. Gardner-Johnson could do it if they needed to, but he can't because he's hurt. So they don't have the choices they would have. Or of course they could move Mitchell back, which is they could go to what they did in training camp, which is when they go when they go nickel, Mitchell moves inside, and Isaiah Rodgers, who didn't play last week, he was active but never had a snap. Rodgers could be the outside corner. By the way, he's been cleared, so he'll be available, Mike. So they have options. I'm not saying they're great options, but they have options.
Adam Caplan, football at 4. Of course, Eagles and Saints this weekend. We're looking at some of the issues. Kamara, he looks back. This team, run concepts, pretty good, much like the Falcons. Had big running room, defensive tackles in the run D this week. What kind of role will they have?
Well, okay, so the thing is they got to get the rules. The rules, talking to defensive line coaches over the years, there are rules and linebacker coaches. The rules that the linemen have up front, and you're going to see, Mike, the wide zone, the stretch play, that's the old Shanahan stretch play to Terrell Davis. The mid zone, that the Eagles are getting squashed defensively. Their line is not the lineman has been bad. They have to do a better job. It's funny. It's not so much tackling. There's so much space, Mike, to run. It's less to do with tackling. It's cutting down the spacing, and they've got to do a better job. You know, you're going to see it. Clint Kubiak, who learned his offense from his dad, and he really starts. It's funny if you really look at it, Mike. It all started with Bill Walsh. Shanahan works for Walsh. So does Mike Holmgren. Andy Reid worked for Holmgren. Andy takes his version of it, the West Coast offense. He changes it up, but he still runs the West Coast. Everybody, the West Coast offenses, Mike, are dominant in the National Football League. Bobby Slowick, right? Bobby Slowick, who's the Texans offensive coordinator, he was never even a position coach. This guy was an analyst for the Niners. And look at the job he's doing. Look, we could talk how great C.J. Stroud has been, and he really is. But it doesn't help if you don't have a great scheme. They've got a great scheme. So these West Coast offenses and the timing and the crossers. But what I like with this one, Clint Kubiak, is, okay, yeah, we're running a timing-based offense, but we're also going to take shot plays with Rashid Shaheed. So this is going to be tough. The Saints are getting the Eagles at a time when they're very vulnerable. And I'm really surprised that the Saints are only a 3-point favorite. That to me, I would have them at 5 based on the way the Eagles have played.
Well, the one thing we were discussing this earlier, see what you feel about this. They scored 91 points in 2 games. You wonder, at what point, is that who they are offensively, or do they come crashing back down? Or you say, no, this is an explosive offense? Because I don't know that anybody went into this season, Adam, saying, man, this Saints offense is going to be lethal.
No, in fact, I thought it would be around 8 or 9 wins because they're so inconsistent. Carr's never been a consistent quarterback. He's never had a year that Hurts had 2 years ago. He's had some good years, but never elite like Jalen had 2 years ago. They're both very inconsistent, by the way. It is really interesting because you got, I had a running joke with a friend of mine. I call them the inconsistents. You could go throughout the league, and guys who like Trevor Lawrence, right, who flash but have trouble being consistent. Jalen, 2 years ago, elite, great. Last year, regression. This year, so far, not good. Better in week 1, but it wasn't great. It was very up and down last week, not good at all. Then in Derek Carr, you never know what you're going to get, but he's so talented, but he checks the ball down. He's risk-averse, so it's like that, Mike. It's a quarterback-driven league, and you got 2 inconsistent quarterbacks. So to answer your question, Mike, it's not sustainable to score 91 points, 47 and 44. And by the way, Derek Carr's only thrown the ball 42 times. This is ridiculous. What do you have?
They haven't punted. They haven't had a punt one time.
Crazy. Yeah, that's
15 drives, Adam, no punts for Carr.
16 attempts last week, only 11 completions, 243 yards, Mike, on 11 completions. That's ridiculous.
Well, we brought him up. You brought him up, Shaheed. He would worry me big play, sneaking behind somebody and getting behind the safeties in this game.
I'm really interested to see if they go too high because, again, Vic's his history has been 2 deep safeties. For some reason, they're not playing as much too deep. I don't know why. And we're going to talk about this on our pregame show with Cosell. We have the numbers about in terms of coverages and so forth. And, they're heavy zone. It's just a matter of, do they have 2 deep safety? They have to because Olave can run, Shaheed can run, and Alvin Kamara has been reborn. All this, people thought he was finished. They ain't finished.
Yeah.
On that fake grass, that turf, and the dome. Holy smokes, Mike. He's been unbelievable.
You're 100% right. By the way, no surprise, A.J. Brown is officially out. Yep. We'll see what happens with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But they lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's another key guy on that defensive side of the ball. Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, you can get that on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. All right, Adam, we will check up with you on Tuesday.
Thank you.